so helping them, emotionally and in every way. And then they realized that that was not really enough. They needed to deal with perpetrators of those acts. So they partnered with 45 radio stations, developed training modules, and encouraged people, men especially, to organize themselves in groups in their villages to discuss those things and re-examine their lives. There are changes taking place, including rebels in the field calling a radio station, "I've done X, Y, Z, please pray with me, and how do I get out of this?" The third element was they said, okay, so we're helping women, we're helping the perpetrators. What can we do about the youth so that when they grow, they will have the appropriate leadership skills and worldview? So they set up a leadership academy, and the challenge was you come for 6 months, you are trained, and then to get your diploma, you're sent back to your village, and you're asked to go find a problem in your village and come up with a solution to attack that problem. And once you presented and it has been accepted, you go back and actually deliver on that solution. So a young man, his name is Dieudonné, 23 years old, goes back to his village. Women who had not been educated, who were illiterate, pastors who had nothing to do after preaching, on Sunday, they were educated. Brought those pastors, educators, and the women, and was able to get over 350 women within a short period of time, able to read and write in his village. And with that, other villages heard, about it. So you start a momentum there. So with very little capital, these missionaries are able to achieve that. UNESCO is there with hundreds of thousands of dollars. And if you ask what have they done and to look on the ground, you don't see much. So empowering the local NGOs, to me, looks like the next big thing in my view.
So maybe we have time for one or two more questions.
I think actually you already addressed it. You had alluded in your opening statement to churches doing missions in a different way, and then you elaborated on the idea of getting people involved that have financial expertise. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more?
Well, business people are the wealth creators. When you talk about NGOs, where do they get their money? They get it either from governments or somewhere. Where the governments get it, they get it from the wealth creators. So, going back to the best point, capitalism properly executed is a very good thing. And so I just think that's the untapped resource. And I think there's a lot of mission fatigue in church world today. I think people have been doing it long enough. And if they've been in a locale for 10, 15, 20 years, they look and they're saying, are we making a difference? Yes, but the results are pretty mediocre. If we leave, will we be able to see much difference? There's got to be a better way for the time and the effort. And so I think there is a great receptivity. I think in the next few years you're going to see churches take on more new models. And I think once you get a few mega churches do this and show the modeling, I think it'll move very rapidly. And I think over the next 10 years or so, you could see a big evolution in how churches think about their missions, how they think about their social entrepreneurs, their venture capitalists, their consultants, all these people that are sitting in the pews and are really under-engaged.
Just very quickly, a quick example, the Evangelical Covenant Church wanted to do something in the northwestern part of the Congo, again, unreached, lots of poverty, but they have over 200,000 church members in that area. So they came to opportunity about 2009, said, is there some way that we can partner? That you go help our members with the types of services that you are providing, to the extent that our members prosper, they will be able to contribute more, to our mission there. think they committed something like $1.2 million that they want to raise. And they are in conversations, or we were in conversations, and signed memo of understanding and partnership. So that's where that type of really involvement by the church could be.
Maybe one last question for you quickly.
How do you drive greater collaboration? Just going back, David, to your comment, if you look at any one locale, the number of Christian organizations that will be working in that same locale many times on the same problem, like clean water, right? If you could just get everybody working together, Christian organizations working together, the impact would be just tremendous. So collaborative influence and just how do you?
Yeah, I think you need a gatekeeper. You know, I think if you've got an entity on the ground in a locale that is the gatekeeper, that is coordinating activities, then they can decide, does the community want water? So it's not the water group deciding we're going into the community. So it's a community-driven initiative. But if you have the people that are on the ground that are identifying the priorities, the community's identifying the priorities. We've got problems with kids getting out of school early or whatever, and there's a street issue. So who's the good NGO or Christian organization that's doing that kind of work? Well, you've got an intermediary on the ground following up on the priorities that the community is establishing. So they're the great gatekeeper. If you've got enough of these, that's why I think it's so good for a church model, because churches typically are good at defining geography, making a long-term commitment, and going deep. Now I think if you put the business people in the middle of that mix as well, then all of a sudden over the long haul, you're going to be fostering more and more of these partnerships that are driven by the community, not by us, the outsiders. We're facilitators, but we're not driving it, so the priorities are laid by them, and that fosters a collaboration, in my opinion.
This is a little bit an answer to that question, but I have a story that means a lot to me that I just discovered a couple months ago. So I was in Shanghai, and we were interviewing people to become board members for an opportunity operation in China. And the man who was referred to us, Chinese, sat down. He spoke English exactly the way I do because, like me, he grew up in Chicago. So we have this conversation. His dad fled China during the revolution, came to the University of Chicago and taught Chinese. So he grew up in Hyde Park. He said his father gave him a very, very strict traditional Chinese upbringing, and he resented it terribly. And anyway, he went to Northwestern. I think he went somewhere in the U.S. Business School, ends up at JP Morgan, I think, in Asia, as China opened up, ends up in China. Well, one of his stops was in Taiwan, so he married a Taiwanese woman who doesn't speak English very well. So you could hear that at home, they're not speaking any English. So I mean, I can hear the Chicago American English, but also a lot of Chinese English. Well, he has had kind of a 30-year career, is in between jobs, and is excited about being a board member, which in an operation that's serving the poor. And when you think about everything that had to come together for that meeting to take place, forget the meeting, for him to be willing to serve in that capacity, it's just so incredible, because it starts with missionaries who come to China, that some parts of his family responded to Christ's call. They end up in America, they go back. His father still lives in the U.S., but his children don't speak English. The grandchildren don't speak English.
Wow.
They speak Chinese, because their mother speaks, I'm not saying they don't speak English, but they're being raised very Chinese. And it's wonderful. So, what made me think of it was the collaboration, but just the pulling together of all these cords and these ties. And China is the one communist country we operate in. And we have to we're invited guests in somebody else's country. And we're upfront about the fact that we're Christians. And they accept us, etc. But, so you just see the marriage of business, economics, academics, government, church work. That's why it's so exciting.
Well, please join me in thanking our panelists. Conversation. Thank you all.